A little introduction from here. Okay, everyone, welcome back to Concordia University's Fourth Space. Thank you for joining us for the next event in this series of Bold 2024. This one is Respectfully Yours, live episode of the RECAA podcast. Now, to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube. We're live from Fourth Space. We're located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. You know that we work with the university community, so I'll skip that part. But what I will mention is that we're running this as a live stream Zoom meeting. Comments and questions via the chat are fantastic. Those of you in the space, you already know. Lift your hand, we'll get you a mic. It's easy. But now it's my pleasure to hand it over to the team, really, Marietta, and from Respecting Elders, Communities Against Abuse, for this episode of the live podcast. I'll let you introduce Ryan. That's enough for me. Welcome in.
Hello? Can you hear me? I can't hear myself.
Well, you don't until I give you the interview.
Sounds good up here.
Wait. I'm all right? Okay.
Am I on? Oh, that's a good way to start. No.
All right?
Oh, what did you do, Anne? What did you do?
Okay, we'll tell you when you come on.
Okay.
All right. I guess you should know that this is the first podcast of Aging with RECAA. And to formally say, it has been directed, scripted by members of RECAA, Alicia Caro Jimenez, Judy Wong, Sajida Imam, Louise Jack, Marietta Lubelski, Jennifer Chu, and yours truly, Ann Keynes. So, you don't mind if we're a bit nervous. We're supposed to enjoy this, but after that amazing podcast interview, and I know it's live. I mean, is it fair to do the first podcast live when you're just learning it? Anyway, we'll do our best. My name is Ann Keynes. I would like to welcome everyone who is here physically in this room, at home, and wherever you are tuning in to the live broadcast happening in the fourth space of Concordia University. We'd like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous lands. RECAA practices on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose presence marks this territory on which immigrants like RECAA members can also belong. Well, this is the first podcast, and you might want to say, well, what is RECAA and who is RECAA? Since we're doing this, and we hope to have you listen in on the subsequent and the following podcasts that we hope to be telling in the near future. We will be telling our stories, our histories, our challenges, visions, perspectives, and even songs that we share with each other as we age in Quebec and in Canada. So what is RECAA? RECAA is a nonprofit organization founded by elders from the cultural immigrant communities of Montreal. RECAA in French is Ressources ethnoculturelles contre l'abus envers les aînés. And in English, we say Respecting Elders, Communities Against Abuse. For over 20 years, RECAA has been reaching out to elders in the ethnic communities and the public, the general public, through our theater workshops. They've been mostly for 20 years in-person workshops. There is definitely more to say about RECAA, which will be the subject of our next podcast, so stay tuned. Okay. Today, members or I should say member, I have to say that there has been another, there would have been another interviewer, but she had an emergency and had to leave. So I'd like to introduce Marietta Lobelski, who will be interviewing our first guest in our first podcast, and we are really happy. Ryan Backer is a friend and strong human rights advocate for the elderly and an activist against ageism. And Ryan, we're going to be talking ageism with you today. So let's begin. Will you actually do the honor of introducing yourself to the audience and those listening at home?
Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. So my name is Ryan Backer. I also have the nickname Twinkle, so a lot of people in Montreal know me by that nickname. I'm so honored to be the inaugural guest on this podcast. It's really a joy to be here, especially a joy to be at Bold, Be Old, which is actually in 2019, the first place where I gave a workshop on this topic in Montreal right after I moved here. So it's really nice to be home in a way in this space at Fourth Space. So thank you so much for having me. I'll share my microphone with Marietta.
Oh, we have to share it.
Yeah.
That's good.
Maybe Anne, you could just pass yours over.
And if I
Yeah,
ask you a
and then
question
that might work.
to you,
It's so that
Okay.
she can interrupt me.
that's what I was
Whenever she wants. I gave her that permission.
okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, anyway, Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you very much for being here. And I'm sorry, but after Kim's interview, I'm a bit apprehensive. But anyway, so I'm a bit nervous, which I wasn't up till now, but now I am. So just put up with me, whatever happens.
Same.
Anyway, the first question is, when and why did you decide to focus on aging and ageism?
Thank you for the first question. This is probably the most popular question I get, and I'll come around to why maybe in a bit. But it's definitely a seed, I think, that was planted early on, maybe in my teenage years, and it didn't really sprout until my mid-20s. The first thing I'll say is that I had a lot of missed opportunities to spend time with my grandparents. So by choice sometimes, and also not by choice for other reasons. That definitely had an effect on me over the years. And then something I don't really talk about that often, but I thought in this context I would, is the effect that the climate crisis has had on my journey to where I am now. And in my teenage years, I felt the beginnings of climate anxiety around what was happening to our Earth. And I felt like I didn't have the capacity, in a way, as I got older, and I wanted to, in my early 20s, wanted to make a difference, make a change. And I really saw how much change was needed in our culture, of our consumer culture, how much change was needed. I wanted to make an impact, but I wasn't sure how, and I felt very overwhelmed by my climate anxiety, by the climate crisis. And I took time to reflect on how I could make that change. And I realized that if I went into climate justice, if I went straight into the world of, I mean, now it's the movement of Extinction Rebellion, the world of science, and the world of really facing it head on, I realized it would jeopardize my mental health in too serious of a way. I have still so much respect for people doing that important work, but I realized that I wouldn't be able to handle it. I'm sensitive. I'm too sensitive for that. So I looked for other ways to make an impact, and I saw something. I saw that there was a huge divide between older and younger people. And I think in my later teenage years, I tried to bridge that divide quite often. I would spend time with older people in my family, distant relatives. I would go out of my way to talk to people who were older than me and connect with them. Same with my friends' parents. I would always, make time to connect with them. And I saw that spending time with older people really helped my mental health in a serious way. So I saw working with older people as a way to make a change. At the time, I didn't have the language for it, but I saw it as a social justice issue. I saw the fact that there was this great divide as an issue that had to do with society. I didn't necessarily know why or what was the cause of it. I would say now, I think the cause of it is capitalism, is colonialism, there's a lot of reasons. Those are two that hopefully we'll get into later on. And then that's sort of what got me into the aging world. And I must say, one important point I want to make about that is that for the most part, I came from a good place. I would hope I was coming from a good place with it, but I also feel like there was a bit of ageism in my approach because I was what you might call practicing benevolent ageism, because society was telling me that older people are suffering and that they need help and they need the young savior to come in and save the day. And I felt that as I was getting into, I went to university for gerontology. So I felt that. And I quickly, though, learned about ageism. In my first gerontology class, I learned the term. It was the same semester that I watched Ashton Applewhite, who's now my colleague, speak about ageism, about the harms of ageism. And I realized, oh, this is it. This is what I've been sort of feeling and realizing and seeing all around me, but I didn't have a word for it. I didn't have a way to talk about it. And from then until now, I feel like I've really been course correcting my path. Every week I learn something different about this topic, about aging, about experiencing age that changes the way that I think and talk about it. So that's my short answer.
I loved it. Thank you. Oh, God. Can you hear me? Oh, you can? Okay. I'm sorry. This is not the first time I used a microphone, but it's the first time I ever used a microphone, which is kind of hysterical. Anyway, the second question, and how would you compare the attitudes to aging in cultural communities to those in mainstream Canadian communities?
This is a great question, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, for sure, because I think there is a difference between mainstream culture, aging in mainstream culture, and also aging in different cultural communities. I think I try to avoid making blanket statements about groups of people. I think there are as many different ways to age as there are people aging. So it's a lot of different ways to age. I would say sort of to take a step back and to explain sort of my viewpoint on capitalism and colonialism. I think we are living, hopefully at the end, but certainly during what I would call the colonial project, or the capitalist project of Literally, hundreds of years ago, Europeans came over and stole land in North America, and also, implicated millions of Africans in the transatlantic slave trade, and basically created a structure that we're living in right now. It took me many years to figure out this structure, and I'm still figuring it out. It's, again, one of those things that I'm learning about every day. But I think it created this system to talk about the mainstream culture for a second. It created a system of property. It created a system of control. And I think, when it comes to taking land, yes, that's an issue. But then I think there's also taking up people's time, taking up people's energy, taking up people's livelihood, and just the way that they live their lives. And I feel like capitalism has caused us to live in a way that's so focused on ability and productivity. And I think living in mainstream culture and aging in mainstream culture, there's a way that we age into obsolescence, in a way, where if we're retired and we're not working, what do we have to contribute to society? That's the way that capitalism thinks about aging. And then on the other hand, we have a lot of cultures, and I do hesitate to, again, make blanket statements about whole groups of people, but there is evidence of other cultures treating aging differently. And the first example that I'll bring up is indigenous culture. Has a great respect for older people, but also for younger people. There's respect across ages. From what I've learned and heard from the indigenous folks in my life. There's also in Asian cultures, I think there's a tendency in a lot of Asian cultures, there's a tendency to respect older people. I think that capitalism and our current structure of globalization is changing that a bit. I think there is, as the West spreads everywhere, it's also spreading this idea of ageism. I have my notes here. I'm just gonna take a look. Oh, the last point I wanna make about this topic, and it's evidence, I think, of just how far our mainstream culture has gone when it comes to this topic. For years now, I have been talking about artificial intelligence, and I know that I don't want to say that AI is all bad, because I know that there's good things about AI. But from the beginning, I've been skeptical because of the years that I've spent in this field and the years that I've spent talking to older people. I know that there is live intelligence all around us, with everyone, not just with older people, but specifically older people are ignored way too often. They are not heard. We do not lift their voices enough, and yet we have the audacity to create intelligence, and it's, mostly younger people creating this quote unquote intelligence. It frustrates me that is happening right now. And then on top of that, the past maybe 6 months, maybe year, I guess, with the computer-generated images, AI images, I don't know if anyone's noticed, other than me, and pointing it out to my partner all the time. There are images that I'm assuming mostly younger people create of older people in the most fantastical settings with the most fantastical outfits and the most fantastical hair. And people hold this up as anti-ageist art, you might say. They say, well, look at this. Look at what we've created. Isn't this so fantastic? Doesn't this really put older people in such a beautiful light? But it's artificial. It's not real. It was created by computers and younger people for the most part. I see older people all around me who are so beautiful, and of all ages, I want to say, who are just striking, just so, and live, live, real older people who we, again, ignore in favor of these images of younger people. And if you haven't seen the images, I highly recommend it, because they are beautiful, I'll admit that, but they're not real. So I feel like we need to be real when it comes to this topic. And I see, when I'm in cultures, when I'm surrounded by people of different cultures, people outside that mainstream culture, because I would count myself as outside mainstream culture. I think I've spent many years, most years, I would say probably all my life, trying to escape mainstream culture. But when I'm outside of mainstream culture, I do feel that reality. I feel like there's a groundedness that comes with being outside of mainstream culture that I appreciate, and I try to be in all the time, but it's not that easy. Does that answer your question?
Pretty well. Thank you very much. And
Thank
not only
you.
that, yeah, I think you're opening up a whole new vista that certainly I don't know, many of you may be aware of it, but certainly I wasn't. I never thought, well, I knew about globalization, but I never thought of artificial imagery of older people. I don't even know what really you're talking about.
It's hard to explain without seeing it. This is where I wish we
Can
were
you give
online
us
and I
a-
could screen share. Where's my screen share ability?
Okay, maybe you could
I'll show
tell
you
us.
later. Give an example?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. I'm sorry, I'm deviating for the
No,
questions.
look, it's great. Do you want to go in?
It's okay.
Okay. Okay, so an example of an AI image of an older person, the way I would describe it is colorful, very colorful, with maybe the person has a different colored hair. And when it comes to AI images, always, everyone is kind of soft, very, you might even say youthful looking. I mean, we could say, what does youthful mean? But that's another, very soft with maybe very well dressed, and maybe in a setting that's a bit magical. Yes, thank you.
Oh my God, thank you.
So interesting enough, the World Health Organization's yellow and blue images in the middle of all of that I would hope that I don't think that was computer generated. I think that was those are real models. But the one next to it, to the left, probably I would say is,
Oh my God.
yeah. I think the ones that always stick in my mind. Oh yeah, the top left is a runway. I mean, there are fashion shows that already exist with all older people. Why do you need to recreate this? I don't know. This is the ones that I think of are the ones where they're at festivals. So the festival going older people. Yes, does that help you?
Yes,
Seeing
it
these
does.
images?
It certainly does.
It's all fake.
But I certainly wouldn't recognize. Oh, run away. Whatever. Okay, never mind.
You wouldn't recognize it as fake?
No,
Is that...
the one about the one on the left with the yellow,
Oh, the yellow and blue, yeah.
yeah, yellow and blue. That to me is very obvious. The rest, I wasn't quite sure.
Well, the yellow and blue is one that I don't think, and so that's from the World Health Organization's campaign
over
against
there.
ageism.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure those are real models. I'm 99% sure that those are real models.
What about the second one on the top?
No, that's fake.
No.
Okay.
But
I'm
was
so
just thinking
sorry.
No,
I'm so sorry.
I'm just also thinking not only of time, but I would have to say, Ryan, that if you don't mind me interrupting, when we're talking about real, there is real virtual and AI and real. And I'm just thinking of some of the portraits that you can put on AI where you put your face as a young person and it can be superimposed and you can see what you might look like when you're old, right? Now, it's very interesting following, aging in data. And I really think that I have to point this out just in case I don't remember and I forgot to put a pencil and piece of paper for me. So I have to say this, and that is it's kind of what Kim was saying about really built-in obsolescence, A long time ago, my mother, who never got to university, but again, somebody missed out. She was very intelligent, but she was a reader. And she read a book by somebody, Vance. And that's the first time I heard the term obsolescence, that things now, and you mentioned capitalist society, but I'll just say consumer society. We're a consumer society. And I think that's what happens, that you have built-in obsolescence even within aging. And we have very many different images, and we're certainly not a homogeneous group. And I think as Kim pointed out too, is that when you're doing it, when we're so digitally conscious, we really are, and we don't quite have the opportunity to really work things out about what is real to us, what is real to the public moving, but we are definitely subjects of consumerism, how we should look, how we should be acting, what are the pills we should be taking. Big Pharma is really getting richer on us, okay? All right, I'm sorry, I had to do this because I couldn't write it out.
It's always great to hear from you, Anne. You have interruption you're allowed, exactly. You're allowed to interrupt as well. Just grab it.
Okay, by the way, I agree with Anne 100%. Aren't you happy?
Yes.
Anyway, question, what are the major findings in your work? I think you've outlined some of it in the previous question. Can you add anything else to it, or would you like to add anything else to it? It's up to you. Now I can go to the next one.
No. I love this question. I love this question because it does make me feel like a researcher.
Oh, okay.
I do some formal research, I must say, and I'll get into that in a sec. But I do want to go back to, I brought up when you asked the first question about how I got into this work. And I said, it's the question that I get the most often. Why? Why do you do this? And one of my findings, one of the ways that I interact with this question is really measuring the level of suspicion that people have about me being a young person interested in this topic. Anne just said that's ageism, and I would have to agree. I would guess that maybe people who are working in other fields maybe they get that question. I hope they do, because it is an interesting. Our origin stories are always interesting, but I think I get this question in a level that's a bit intense, a bit suspicious, and I would say that that's ageism, because where people are coming from when they might not realize it. And I'm not saying everyone who asks this question maybe is coming from this place, but I think a lot of the times it is, why would you want to be doing this? In a culture that doesn't value older people, why would you want to put your time and attention into this topic? So I've used it sometimes as a teaching opportunity to say, well, why does it matter? Like, I wish that there were so many more people who were doing this work. And of course, like, we're in this room, like, we're doing this work. We're all together doing this work. But when it comes to younger people doing this work, I think if we had sort of the same uplifting of people who work with younger people, if we uplifted younger people who decided to get into this field in the same way, it would do a great service to this field, for sure. I could literally talk for hours about my findings, but I will bring up some research that actually, magically, Anne asked me to bring up this point, and it's going to take me a minute to get there. But I think it's a really important point. So to step back a bit and to introduce what I actually do with a lot of my time, I am the co-founder of Old School. We started off as a clearinghouse of anti-ageism resources, and we've evolved into what I would call a hub of activism when it comes to raising awareness around ageism. So when we were, and we still are, but as a clearinghouse at the beginning of the pandemic, I did research with Tracy Gendron at Virginia Commonwealth University, and we looked at all of the resources, most of the resources that we had on the site. So what we do is we create some resources, but most of our resources come from outside of us. So we find those resources on the web, people send us those resources, and we put it all in one place for people to easily search and find anything having to do with ageism. We have some criteria, but for the most part, anything having to do with ageism, we put it on our site. So anyway, we went through all of these resources, and there were, at the time, I think there were 200 something, but there was some criteria for this research that I think it was just over 200 resources that we looked at. And the way that we looked at these resources and categorized them was in two different sort of boxes, I guess you could say. So there was the sort of whether it was passive or whether it was active. So for the passive resources, it's basically if you read a book, if you watch a film. So we have films, we have videos, we have podcasts that you can listen to. So we have all these different passive resources, and then we have more active resources where you have to actually do something. So whether it's a quiz or whether it's a DIY workshop where you give a workshop that we have created for you. There's all different types of active resources as well. So we split up all of the resources into these two groups. And then we also looked at sort of what area of life are these resources really tackling. So when we talk about ageism, we can talk about it on a societal level, systemic ageism. We can talk about it institutional, so age discrimination at someone's job. That's an institutional idea of ageism. And then interpersonal, so between two people, if someone says a really ageist comment to someone else, that's interpersonal. And then the real important one that our research found doesn't get highlighted enough. There's not as many resources as one might expect on this topic, and that's self-directed ageism. So it's the way that we talk to ourselves about our age, the choices and habits that we have around how we feel about our age. And we found that, for the most part, we had tons of resources about societal ageism, about structural ageism at the biggest level, and all of those were mostly passive oriented. And the ones that we had the least amount of, which going into this research project, I did not expect. I thought it would be actually the opposite. We did not have as many resources looking at ageism that is self-directed. And it kind of makes sense that a lot of them weren't active oriented as well. So that's really motivated my work in so many ways. It gave me proof to say that, a lot of my work is just having conversations with people, with individuals, having conversations, and also getting together collectively and looking at these issues. And that, I think, that's not passive. My workshops are not passive. Anyone who's been to a workshop that I do, it's very interactive. It's highly interactive. And that's such a great way to learn about this topic and learn about how ageism is living through us, how ageism is in our bodies, embodied.
Can I ask you a question again? I should be going to the next one, but I'm not.
Yeah,
No,
ask
no,
a
no.
question.
Yeah, I should? Or can I just ask something on this one? So self-directed ageism,
Self-directed.
is that also include that we impose on ourselves certain standards that we hear other people say, but we don't, it's almost done subconsciously, unconsciously, whatever. And do you mean by that, remember, we talked about that a little bit before, but do you mean that too when you talk about self-directed ageism?
Absolutely. And I think it starts off really young. I remember being a teenager and thinking, I haven't done enough. For the age that I am, I feel like I should be so much more accomplished. I should know so many more things. And this continues until, we get to a point where where we start, when we're in our early 20s, we were taught to look a certain way, right? And so we have younger people doing Botox, and people in their 20s doing Botox and buying anti-aging products. And it just continues from there. Is that what you're asking?
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was
Yeah.
asking. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Thank
definitely
you
the
very much.
standards.
Sorry for deviating.
No, you're not deviating. It's all connected. Did you?
Is the word ageism being overused, or can you hear me? Yes. I can't hear myself, so it's okay. Or is it an excuse to exclude the various parties involved? What are your views?
So excuse me, do I think ageism is overused? Considering that a lot of the times when I talk to people who aren't in this field about ageism, and they'll say that's the first time I've heard that word, I think it is still entering the lexicon. I think it's definitely a topic that I think in this world is used a lot, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I do, it is hard to, when I talk about old school, the subtitle is a anti-ageism clearinghouse. And then oftentimes I get labeled as an anti-ageism activist. It's always hard to have the anti part, to always be focused on the anti, to be like, it would be like always coming from the negative, always looking at the negative. I think that can be a real challenge. But I do think for the longest time, the focus has been on this idea of successful aging. And I think it's a standard that also has a lot to do with classism. It's a standard that we expect so much of older people to be able to be a certain way, essentially not age in a way, to stay a certain way, that then will sort of sorry, now I'm losing my train of thought. I'm gonna look at the overused excuses of various parties involved. So is it being overused? I would say no, not yet. I remember the point I'm trying to make. Successful aging has been the MO for a long time, especially in the field of gerontology, and I think knowledge of ageism is kind of balancing it out. And I'm hoping that I can not always have to focus on ageism for the rest of my life. I think I might have to, but that's another story. But I think it is sort of, it's a balancing act, I would say. So then the second part of the question, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Is it an excuse to exclude various parties involved? So the way that I would define ageism is discrimination on the basis of age. So that's any age. So you can be ageist against young people, you can be ageist against older people. There's, I would say, less ageism for people in the middle. There's like a safe zone, you might say. There's less ageism for that safe zone of someone like me who's age ambiguous. There's less ageism for those folks, but I think there's still ageism. I get questioned all the time, why are you here? When I'm in spaces like these, maybe not like these because it's at a university, but when I'm involved in maybe spaces that are looking at aging and age in the community. So for instance, there's, for membership organizations, there's age minimums. So I can't join some of the organizations that I love and support and want to be a part of because I'm too young. So I think there is, because it's possible to be ageist against anyone at any age, I don't think that it's an excuse to exclude anyone. There is an argument that says, well, if we're talking about ageism against younger people, maybe that's watering down the important topic of ageism against older people. I have a different opinion. I think that when we talk about aging, not just ageism, but when we're talking about aging, it's a universal truth for everyone. It's an experience that we all go through. I love this topic because I can literally talk to anyone about this topic and they will have something to say about it because we're all doing this. So I hope it doesn't exclude anyone. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. Oh,
Sorry, I stole it.
this is the last one. Aren't you happy? I'm not going to pester you again. What financial support do the 3 levels of government in Canada and business funds reduce the practice of ageism? What kind of money is there? Is there any money?
I'd say not enough.
Oh.
There is some. I'd say not enough. When we're talking about ageism, government, and business, I'd say the most important topic, the most popular topic is age discrimination in the workplace. So I guess it wasn't, I looked this up for this because I wasn't sure. Mandatory retirement wasn't banned in Canada federally until 2011 or 2012. And in the States, it was 1986. That's a huge gap. But then I remembered when I first moved here, I heard Freedom 55. I'm from the States, by the way. I'm from New Jersey, in case you didn't get that yet by my accent. I heard Freedom 55 and I said, what is that? That sounds really interesting. And sure enough, so mandatory retirement was banned in the States in 1986. And then around that time, right after that, is when Freedom 55 became popular here. And I don't know who did it. It was some big ad campaign about how the dream is to retire at 55.
Insurance company.
Insurance company. Now it's Freedom 95. Okay, there you go. Yeah. But for what reason is it Freedom 95? Or what freedom? Or 55? Yeah, well. Oh, I see. Okay, so it was an investment firm, and if you invested with this investment firm, you'd have enough money to retire at 55. Okay, but it became what I would call meme, right? It sort of entered the culture in a certain way. It became your fantasy.
The goal you're supposed to all achieve, and then,
Right.
now the joke is it's Freedom 95.
Okay, and then the joke is it's Freedom 95. Okay, thank you. So what was my point? Okay, so that's one thing. That's what the federal government does. Great. They banned discrimination when it comes to employment. But even so, they didn't ban. Did I just say they banned discrimination? They banned mandatory retirement. Did they ban discrimination? No. So when it comes to hiring, recruitment, when it comes to giving benefits, and when it comes to training, all of these things still exist. It's everywhere when it comes to employment, when it comes to ageism, age discrimination in employment. So are they doing enough? No. When it comes to the three levels of government. So when it comes to provincial government, I mean, I don't, again, I'm still new here. So I don't want to make like broad generalizations. But I know that there's been a big push from the CAC government to sort of change the the world of long-term care in Quebec. Are they doing enough? Probably not. I just know that they were essentially hiring a lot of younger people to come in and work. Is that going to help? I don't know. Has it? I don't see much evidence of it helping. And now, hopefully, they're trying to change long-term care in folks' homes. And that will maybe, I don't know. So I don't think they're doing enough, to be honest. And maybe there's money in it, but maybe there's enough money. I don't know. I don't think so. In my opinion, they're not doing enough. It's not funded enough. And then when it comes to business, so when it comes to these questions, I think for me, it's not more of whether they're doing enough to reduce the practice of ageism. I think it's what they're still doing to that increases ageism, that spreads ageism. So to end, I'm a bit nervous to talk about this because it's something that I'm still figuring it out, and I'm sure there's folks at this university who probably or maybe have a different opinion of this, or maybe they could confirm what I've been thinking. But here in Quebec, there is a campaign right now that I see all over, and it's vieillir, c'est vivre. I'm in level 8. Yeah, I'm in level 8 with French right now, so I apologize for my pronunciation. Vieillir, c'est vivre. Have folks seen this campaign? And has anyone seen any billboards out there that says this? Okay, keep your eye out. There's billboards all over that say this, and it says, and in English, it's to grow old is to live. Or okay, so this is a campaign put out by Le Groupe Maurice. Okay, so there's folks here who know this group. So before that, what caught my attention with this group is a campaign that they had before this one. And it was Je suis l'année de demain. So I am the seniors of tomorrow. And I saw it on a billboard No, I think I saw it first. I heard about the billboards, and then I saw it on the street, just walking down the street, and it was a picture of maybe a young person, young, and then their face old. I think that was the image, and it had this quote. And my heart burst. I was so excited. I was like, I never see stuff like this. This is so cool. And then the next thought that I had was, I'm suspicious. What are they selling? And I got closer and I looked at the top, and it was an advertisement from Le Groupe Maurice. Okay, now what is Le Groupe Maurice? It is a private company that creates seniors' residences, private retirement homes. And this campaign was out at the exact same time that Mount Caramel and the folks over there were fighting their landlord to keep their home. And the fact that there are residences for retired folks all over Quebec that are being evicted right now because of the structures that exist. And so I bring all this up as a way to point out what I call gray washing, and it's the way that business and government collaborate to make you think that something is being done about this topic. But when you look at the facts, when you look at what Mount Caramel and what so many other RPAs have gone through, you realize, oh, there's something behind this. There's a reason why they are putting out these anti-ageism campaigns. It's because of what they're doing. And Le Groupe Maurice is notorious for trying to raise rents, for basically making these, luxury homes unlivable for us, for people who aren't rich. So I'll get off my pedestal. I wanted to bring that up. I'd love to hear people's opinions about it. The moan that I heard when I brought up Le Groupe Maurice makes me think maybe we might have to cut this.
I would like to say something. One thing about the privately owned they're not group homes, they're independent
Congregate living.
congregations.
Yeah.
Call it whatever you want. And they are meant to also divide society. This is the problem with them.
Is it defined?
Divide society. Furthermore, so again, we're entering an age where there is something for the rich and something for the poor, and forget about the rest of them. So this is, okay, what were you saying? What time is it? Oh my God. Okay, I won't summarize. I think you said too much anyway. I won't remember it. I wrote it down, but I don't know how to read my handwriting. So forget about summarizing.
It says here, thank you, Ryan. Will you please visit us again? The answer is yes.
Thank you very
I know.
much.
I want to officially thank you, Ryan. And really to say, Ryan, I mean, if I were to summarize a bit, I would say that the key words that you say is you were trying to figure it out. And I think that's a really good suggestion for everyone here, because society and ageism is huge. And even the World Health Organization has said it's largely invisible, but it's everywhere. And that's what we have to keep figuring out, where it fits in systemically, interpersonally, and corporations. And I like the way that you brought in our consumer society. But I do think that you really, you've given us not only things to think about, but really you should come back another time and meet the RECA group. They will have lots of interruptions. But I was also going to say that it is an older immigrant perspective too on what ageism is. And I feel that when we're talking about ageism, there's also, as we raise the cultural issues, and not only of aging and how aging is perceived in different cultures in different countries, but also here, how we're being heard about our aging and what it means for us to age as older adults as immigrants in a culture. So I do thank you, and I want you to add, and maybe one question or two, because we are really
that's a
going
good
over
idea.
time.
Okay, I'll shut up. No, the only, never mind, it's too political. So, so
Oh, I do have to, are you going to say something? You said never
I
mind.
rather don't.
Oh, okay, all right.
It goes with good morals.
Okay, all right. I want to close with acknowledging some very important people to RECA, and also to say that I won't say too much about them because you'll probably hear them on our future podcasts. I want to first thank Franklin Bonavento, who's right there, who's really, I have to say, very clear but deceptively simple teaching. We had to do a lot of exercises before, and they were supposed to be simple, just wing it, have a good time. But we are very grateful because he is rooted in knowledge and varied experiences in podcasting. And he has given us the self-confidence, the little self-confidence just to do it today. Okay, so I really thank you, Franklin. And he continues to not only instruct but mentor us. I want to thank Constance Lafontaine of ACT and Kim Sawcheck, of, I guess both, from Engage, and for inviting us to participate in Let's Age Together in Bold, and to launch this first podcast. And I want to acknowledge RECA members here present who have always supported us and will be on podcasts in the future, so you'll hear them. And those unable to attend physically in the fourth space, but who are listening elsewhere. And then I also want to thank and to acknowledge Eric Craven, who's always been a part of RECA, especially when it requires digital. He has made us do things we didn't think we could do, and I appreciate that. And also the West Montreal Library, who really did a fabulous interview with Kim, and who has given us a little bit of advice. Speak slowly, they said, and don't shuffle your papers because they're going to be recorded. I think we plastered them on paper and made sure we didn't touch them. Anyway, and I thank you, the audience in the fourth space, for your physical witness to our podcast, Aging with RECA. So keep listening to the next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming in. Thank you, Anne, Marietta, Ryan. This is Team RECA. And what just an amazing day. We're going to wrap it up here. We skipped this question period, which we really never like to do, but I feel like everyone should just stick around in the space and have a conversation, move around. We're going to be closing up the live stream in the Zoom and invite